incremental readings. So let's continue the myths and facts about Supermemo or incremental reading. Now it's time for repetition loads skyrocket in Supermemo. Like the outstanding queue increases, bam, ever increases and skyrockets. Is it a fact? Is this a fact or myth? So, in other words, what we'll see is how exponential fading frees room for new learning. It involves a little math, conceptual math, but it's very basic. But let's start with the myth. So as you keep adding items to Supermemo, each item never graduates. Graduates in between brackets. In Anki, this is a term when a card graduates, meaning you have learning steps, and when you finish the learning steps, it graduates. When it's graduated, starts the process of space repetition. It gets scheduled according to the space repetition algorithm. In Supermemo, there's no such thing. When you create the element, the item is instant graduation because it already has an interval. Because the first repetition is the creation, because you're using incremental reading. In space repetition software, you don't. So what you do is that from elsewhere, or AI, or you manually typing, you create the flashcard and becomes a new flashcard because this flashcard comes from outside of the app. You have done the learning outside of the app, unlike in Supermemo. Okay. Simply speaking, an item never graduates. It's already above that when you create the item. But let's simplify that you create the item. So eventually, repetition piles become unmanageable. And what is the impression of this claim? That you end up buried under a mountain of daily review forever. This is especially true for users who use Anki, especially the users who don't create their own flashcards. So they already have thousands of flashcards available for them, and they just start reviewing that deck. So quote, no item is ever memorized for good. It's always prone to forgetting. We're not machines. So how can you avoid repetition overload? Let's see how we can do that. Let's start with the fact. Observation and simulation. Real-life data shows that even with consistent daily learning time, we can keep adding new material without repetition loads, spiraling out of control beyond the first few months. So if I just start using Supermemo today, I can add every single day, I can add items and review the items I already have. The day one, there's nothing. I have created items in the past that are scheduled for today, right? Then I will have an interval of a few days, Then after a few weeks, I will have material to go through, but I still have time to create new ones. But after a few months, what will happen is that what could happen is that the item repetitions, the schedule, the outstanding repetition queue for items is already too much. I'm not going to finish it. Then, nearly linear acquisition. Knowledge acquisition is sublinear. All our items need fewer and fewer reviews over time, making a space for new items. That is what it's like frequency and the period. So let's see that I speak a rate of let's do it simple, 120 words per minute. That's the frequency, 120. Or 2 words per second. Now I'm just changing the unit. Okay. If we do the opposite, we divide 1 over the frequency, we have the period of how much time do I spend for each word. It will be half a second is 1 divided over 120. It's 0.5. So let's do one example. I speak at a rate of 100 words per minute. Nice. Meaning that every minute that I speak, by average, I will have said 100 words. That's the frequency. How many words per unit of time? It's frequency. Now if I do the opposite, 1 over 100, sorry, 60 over 100, because I want, let's put it here. So let's put it here. I speak 100 words per minute. That is the frequency. Nice. Then if I do the opposite, 1 over 100, okay, that will be the period. I do the inverse, so 1 over itself, 100, is 0.01 minutes and equals to 0.6 seconds. I multiply by 60, it's the same as this. That means that I will pronounce, say out loud a word, by average, every 0.6 seconds. It's the same thing as saying that I speak 100 words a minute. Cool. Then, how many repetitions I do today? A flashcard repetitions. So what happens that today, if I do a flashcard for the first time, it will be 1. It's the same, in fact, of the load we have. Do you see the average workload and the expected workload? It's actually this. It's the same math. So let's say that I have one flashcard. Today is 1 over 1. It's just today. Then let's say that the interval is 3 days. Means it will be a third. This item is 1/3 for 3 days. It will become a unit in 3 days. So by average, the scope is a third. Now, the next repetition is 10 days. Means this flashcard is counting 1/10. Because it's one flashcard every 10 days. So the load, it will be 1/10. Let's say that the interval is already 1 year. This flashcard is having a load of 1 divided in 365, which is very low. Now I have 18,000 items. So therefore I may have one flashcard like this, one flashcard like this, with the intervals. You know what I mean? So if I just open my items, do you see here it will be 1 over 2 will be 0.5, 1 over 10, 1 over 4, but the others are divided by 1,000, 900, 500. So they add very low quantity each day. So the longer the interval, the lower the load, if this makes sense. That's why the linear acquisition is sublinear. It's not linear. The growth is slightly, it becomes slower with time. Okay, having said that, as other items fade in review frequency, 1/10, 100, 1,000th, and so on of load, new items come and flow in, sustaining a balanced daily load. If most of what I have is like this instead, the load will be super high. Let's say that in a Sunday I was hooked and I created a lot of items. What will happen? That I will have a peak at my workload in the coming days. We'll have a lot of items with very short intervals, meaning that the load is very high. It's very dense. But once I pass through this, assuming I don't have more Sundays that I repeat the same thing, the same behavior, then this becomes diluted and diluted as the intervals grow. Even if I have more flashcards, imagine I copy this several times. This is still a lower load overall than if I only had 4 flashcards of just 1 or 2 days interval. That's why, as data vaults grow, I have opportunity that the load decreases, so the load of maintaining the knowledge I already have acquired, and I want to retain it in the long-term memory, decreases over time. Therefore, I can increase the new material. I hope it's good to follow, and no worries. In the section of the course about stats, we will go through the load anyways with real data. But this is just a part of theory. So let's go directly why it works. Exponential fading. Each item's next review intervals grows exponentially. In a spaced repetition, the items are always increasing and they increase exponentially. Double, each time is double. Each time is threefold or fourfold or whatever. So imagine 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, da da da. Eventually you will end up with 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, and super long. So long story short, the old material surfaces less often. You will see more often what's higher priority, yes, and what you lapse. Yeah, here we're simplifying. So as long as you don't fail to recall the material, it will be expanding exponentially. Therefore, over time, the burden, the load, of repeating older items shrinks, letting new items fit in. By the way, we also have the burden. It's daily, let me see. Okay, no change today. That's the burden I have. 4,000. It's crazy. So now no worries, what is burden exactly, what is load in the stats, we will see this in the respective section. The thing that even if you, let's say you started as a noob, you start a Supermemo and you created items like there's a tomorrow, and now you're in the situation that loads Skyrocket Supermemo, press the brake, don't do new items for a while, go through the outstanding for a few days, until the load decreases. As easy as that. And then start more conservative, just a few items a day. And you will see more or less a sweet spot. And if you exceed it slightly, no worries. What will happen is that you will have priority protection. It won't be 100%. It will be 80% or whatever. No worries. So then, what's the quote? The more stable an item becomes, the less it appears. Exactly. If you don't leech it, you don't lapse it, it will have always the scheduled exponentially. If you lapse it once again, you will see it more often because you start again from scratch, but then it will increase faster than before. You will do a few less reps than the very first run. Then, hence, leaving capacity for fresh knowledge. That's why if you are an Anki user who doesn't create your own flashcards, you just go through a flash pre-made deck, what's going to happen? You do a lot of flashcards at the same day, one day, because there's nothing else to do. There's no reading. You don't create the items. So it's only reviewing flashcards. Anki is the only purpose. So you do a few hundred. Then tomorrow, you have only a few of what you have done. So you do 80. So in just a week, you have 1,000 already. You will be trapped. Your burden skyrockets. Yes, skyrockets, but because of this usage that is very improper of incremental reading. Nice. So the initial hurdle, the first months. So let's go back to the Supermemo user, not the Anki user. So after a few months, the daily repetition load may feel heavy because new items haven't reached long intervals yet. Exactly. Now I'm in a sweet spot because I have items from yesterday or a few days, last week, last month, 3 months ago, half a year, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, and so on. But not at the beginning, because at the beginning you cannot have something from last month, right? So all of your items are either created today or created a few days ago or a few weeks ago. So the interval that they may have is just a few weeks, top. That's why at the beginning you have this feeling. You don't have a natural distribution of the intervals. All of the intervals are very short. Okay. Then after the sterilization, depends how much you use Supermemo, how many items you do, the items are scattered over extended periods, diminishing overall daily reviews. So you have exactly the normal distribution, more or less. So quote, like a wave, the early crest feels high, but it levels off once older items mature in your memory. Again, mature following the Anki terminology. In Anki, you will be surprised that the threshold that is, by the way, considered arbitrary. So it's 21 days, 3 weeks. That was an arbitrary decision that it's long enough that it's mature, meaning that has been enough to be stable. That doesn't mean that it has been 21 days since you have created that flashcards. Because you will have 1 day interval or a few days, then 5 days, then let's say 17, and in the next have more than 21 will be already mature. In Supermemo, you could have flashcards, by the way, that exceed these 21 days in the first interval. You can go as long, is in my case, you can go as maximum 33 days. It's capped by design. And then you have bonus. So if the priority is very low, you will have bonus. Since it's low, you want the item to have a higher interval because it's not that relevant. You want to have a lower retention rate for that item because it's very low priority. It can reach up to 40 days. Close to the double. So with this is already a hint how Anki was meant to be used, perhaps not now with SRS, but before with SM2 algorithm. In Supermemo, please don't consider that. 21 is in the very short term. 3 weeks interval is very short. Months, half a year is a rather short interval. Believe me, that's not long. Half a year is not a long interval in a space repetition. Cool. Then Nuance mountain. Long-term equilibrium. Repetitions for all items become sporadic. New item find time slots. Exactly. Since I have been following priorities and I do the repetitions on the high level priorities and the items of in the spectrum, high level, in the high position of the spectrum in the queue. So I do the repetitions of the items that are high in the priority queue. Those will be eventually one. If they have a year, it will be 1/180, the load it's adding to keep that element in my collection. So therefore I will have more space. Now the question is what happens. Let's follow the same example. I have flashcards in the 180 about half a year, and then I have another one, let's say like this, but has higher priority, right? Exactly that's what I want, because what I want at the end of the day is to maximize my learning of high priority. So instead of adding a flashcard who has a longer interval, therefore the load will be lower by average, because I will see this one every 180 days. I may add another one that is just a month interval. So it's like 6 times higher load. It's 6 times more consuming on the load, but it's higher priority, so I don't care. I do not care. So the long-term equilibrium is managing the priorities. At the end of the day, what we have seen also in the other videos, all you need to worry about at the end of the day is just item formulation, how you formulate the knowledge, and priorities. That's it. We can simplify it to this. Everything else is a consequence, or it can be derived from those actions. As easy as that. So therefore, it doesn't matter the load, you want an equilibrium of the priorities. If you have a burst, you discover something new that is critical for you, you add all of those items a very high priority, it will take a toll. Yep, that means, let's say you put 50 items that are super high priority, and I start with an interval of 3 days. This will increase the load, meaning in the next days you will have less time for new stuff. Yes, it's true, but this is because keeping that into memory, a very high priority, is more important than introducing something new or something else that was withheld because the priority was not high enough. And you put it once again. You review that. You review that now, even if it's late. It was outstanding 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, but it was not reviewed because of the priority was too low. So before reintroducing that element to your memory or to your knowledge, no, I want to keep those new ones, and this is temporary. After a few days, the load will decrease, and I will have once again more time to start something new. And perhaps this is a never-ending story, meaning that some items will be perpetually pushed and pushed. They increase, they're about to be reviewed, I introduce new material with high priority, boom. They increase again, boom. And they will never have their turn, ever in your life. This will happen. And it's desired. Because reviewing that item is a lower outcome than introducing a new one that is high priority, if this makes sense. So, don't panic when the queue is large early on. Don't panic if it's in the thousands. After a few months, the system self-regulates, and you just go with the flow. The quantity of the outstanding first, it's a backup, so it's not a precise number, because days pass after I did the backup and I don't use this backup, so the numbers are higher than usual. And also it depends on how much you import. So I could do the same usage of Supermemo, I just have twice as much as content in my collection, because I imported more. But my usage is the same. I will create the same amount of items, repetitions, exactly the same. So I will have 18,000 items, but for topics, instead of 42,000 topics, I will have 100,000 topics. But it will be unprocessed. So what I have processed is exactly the same. So what that will be affecting are the priorities expressed in percentage. That's it. So, quote, yes, you can keep adding knowledge for decades without drawing into daily reviews, because you don't finish your outstanding. So if we go to here, is yes, this will skyrocket if you don't have any solution for overflow. If you are in Anki, that you treat every flashcard the same, you are screwed. Oh shoot, I have 1,000 flashcards due today. Yeah, you can have your conventions where heuristically, let's do this deck before this other deck, or let me do a query, a search query, and I do a customized study session of that. But it's very heuristic. You cannot go specifically from the most important to the least important, because there are no priorities. So let's see tips for managing the growth. Managing, you can avoid. Your collection will be increasing and growing every single day. But your skills, if you do it right, you follow the course, your skills will also grow. So no worries, you will be managing the collection while it grows. Prioritize. As always, prioritize. Number 1. High priority items first, let low priority ones be scheduled or delayed indefinitely. Automatically, it's because, first, if you don't take action, you won't see them. End of the story. They will be perpetually outstanding, and that's it. No action is required. Or if you really want, you can postpone them automatically. Have some effects, not a part of this video, but even though it's not even required. Adjust the pace. If you are in a high level, I don't know, you just change your job, your career. So you have to delay what you had done because you want a lot of staff of very high priority. So you won't be able to afford adding new items of that other thing because you already have an overflow with the high priority because you change your job, kind of thing. It's one example. It's not limited to this case. It's just that this case is very obvious that this happens because of the magnitude of the new additions of very high priority items. So simple as that. That there are too many items, create less items. How you can create less items in Supermemo? Easy. You go to the sorting criteria and you want more topics, more items. Because if you do a lot of topics, then it's likely you will create more and more flashcards and you review less flashcards. So put this more to the left, as easy as that. That is the other way around. Move it to the right. And third, trust the algorithm. I know people who systematically overrule. For instance, I have a video about Little Fish Chan, that he overrules the first interval systematically. Every single flashcard, the first interval is more or less decided by hand, not by the algorithm, which is sad, because usually it's a bias. You introduce more repetitions that are not increasing anything. Well, increasing the time investment, but not something positive. You don't have a higher retention rate or anything else. So just trust the algorithm. You will have expansion intervals at the beginning. They will seem crazy. That what? 1 month first interval? That's crazy. And the next interval, it's half a year. Oh, that's crazy. It's almost impossible I will have this experience in Anki. But once you use incremental loading almost every single day, and after half a year, you see that item and do the repetition, you will be surprised how much you remember. You will do less repetitions and keep the same repetition rate or even higher. Crazy. So therefore, if you trust the algorithm and you don't mess with that, eventually you will preserve a manageable workload. Because this manageable workload is within your priority protection. That doesn't mean you will finish your repetitions. That's not an interpretation of this. It is that your sessions within your priority protection of high priority will be manageable. Everything else will be postponed because it's not that important. Good. Balance is in your hands. Pacing new entries and let other items space out. As easy as that. Conclusion. The myth has been debunked. The fact that repetitions load skyrocket in Supermemo, it's a myth. It's been debunked. The repetition loads does not balloon indefinitely. Other items fade into long intervals, leaving room for fresh knowledge. It will be true if the intervals doesn't grow exponentially. If it will be linearly, that you add 5 days every time, then eventually you will reach that point. So it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, it is not exponential, it's linear. Or it doesn't grow at all. It's always every 5 days. Or, for instance, I don't know now, but years ago, a lot of medical students in Anki were setting a maximum interval of 180, about half a year. That means that regardless of your memory, the interval will increase and increase until reaching 180 days. And then, as long as you recall that, it will be stacked at 180 days. You will see this twice a year. There's a limit. This will become true. Because let's say that I do 10 repetitions a day, that means I do assuming I never fail. So the best case scenario, retention rate of perfection. 10 a day means I will do 3,650 repetitions. If I see this, if I max out the interval, means I have this divided by 2, is the maximum amount of items I can have in my collection. When I reach this, I either increase my time investment with Supermemo, so I do more than 10 repetitions a day, or I cannot add anything, because I'm artificially stopping the interval increase. It's no longer exponential, not linear. It's none, no longer grows. That's why in Supermemo that's never the case. Then the key insight. Once through the initial phase, you maintain a steady daily study time, potentially for decades, whatever that is. Today I only spend 10 minutes, then have an hour, 1 hour, because now I'm more chaotic. So it doesn't mean that every single day I have about the average. But across the month, more or less, if I compare months, there's not much difference. Yes, usually in the summer I spend more time than in winter, or the opposite. But that means because for instance, in winter I spend more time than in summer. Oh, how is that possible? Well, because in summer usually I have vacations, I go out, I do other activities, and doing those other activities in summer is time I don't spend using Supermemo. So more or less makes sense. And this stays for decades. So more or less, let's say you use Supermemo for about 1 hour, 1 hour and a half daily, by average in the long term, you make this stable. Even though you have peaks, that today you spend more hours or just 10 days. 10 minutes, I mean. So the final takeaway of this video. Though new content keeps coming, older items slip into minimal views. The daily load balances. Supermemo's potential intervals handle the rest. That's the key. Trust the algorithm. It's exponential. Oh, it's too long, I will forget it. You don't know. Wait and check if you forget it. You will keep a very high retention rate anyways. Trust the algorithm. Slightly long video, I want this to be in detail. Let me know if the math was fine enough to be understood. And that's enough for today. See you incrementally.